Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of Indie Game Culture Podcast, a podcast where we talk about indies and none of the triple A's. It's indie games only. I am Callum, and I'm here with JT and Melika. We're going to be chatting to you a little bit about indies, believe it or not. But before all that, how are you guys?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk some games. I've been doing so much gaming recently because I've had some free time, so I'm pumped.
Yeah, no, I've been super well. I recently played some multiplayer games with some people, and it's great when you have a big community because they'll just like build everything, and it's really glorious just to watch everything like develop over time. Like within 3 days, you build like a giant civilization in Stardew
Love
Valley
it.
or Core Keeper. Like, it's so good.
Multiplayer can be so much fun.
I have to say that like my gaming experience has been very much outside of indie for a change.
Ooh, that's unlike
I,
you.
I actually bought myself a PSVR 2. I've jumped into the world of VR,
Epic.
and that's been taking up the vast majority of time. I'm saying it now because I don't want to like infect the indie podcast with VR chat, but
It's like, get out of here with that
Uh,
nonsense.
it's been very cool. It has been very, very cool. I think it's a very
Epic.
good time to jump in. It seems like it's no longer a closed shop anymore. Like people are starting to jump in. And it's a bit more accessible. So I am there
Sweet.
with them.
that's good. Like, as long as the price is a little bit more like commercialized, like a little bit more affordable and stuff, and the games are still good, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just for a while, it was so expensive. It was
I
like, okay,
remember when the
do I
Oculus
want
Rift
to?
first came out, it was like insane or something. It was
Yeah.
so expensive and there was nothing to play.
The thing that always put me off was that there are like 20 different cables you had to have your head around and understand
Yeah.
how they all worked and had to install different software to get them working. The PSVR is literally just one cable that plugs into the PlayStation. So
That sounds much more manageable. Like I've never even bothered to try with
Yeah,
VR really.
I much rather go with that than like the mess of like tangles and wires like as you're moving around.
Yeah, definitely.
I still get annoyed that there's one wire behind my head, and I think that's just because I've never had the displeasure of all the other stuff. I'm a bit spoiled coming in at this stage, but you know. And then outside of gaming, I actually took on something that was just as satisfying. I bought myself a power washer and I started power washing the garden.
I love it. I played Power Wash Simulator so much, so you are living my dream right now, Cal.
Was it the same experience as the game? I was like, wow, this is just like the game, but in real life.
Do
Yeah,
you know
honestly, I
what?
was legit when I played it. I was like, I need to buy myself a Power Washer. I want this experience all the time.
No, I would genuinely go and do it because it is so satisfying.
I would if I
Like,
had a garden, but I was in a flat with like a road outside, so I don't want the council saying, "Oi, why are you making this road clean? It's supposed to be dirty, so we can charge you taxes and do nothing about it."
yeah, well, I've done my gardening. I'm kind of like, oh, well, what am I meant to do now?
I
Just
just
have to wait for it to get dirty again.
Just give me memories of my dad just like asking like, all right, JT, you're just gonna power wash our whole property, which we just have like a massive like fences covering like an acre and a half. I'm like, Dad, are you serious?
You guys are living
And
the dream.
yeah, it was
I was,
actually
I
kind
was,
of fun.
I was watching like, funny enough, yesterday, watching the guy that was like on, that was like one of those like mindless TikTok things of like the guy power washing really, really filthy rugs till they're absolutely spotless clean.
I
And I was
love
like,
those on
that could be
TikTok.
me. I could be doing that.
It's like it's like I just lose track of time. I'm just so involved in the dirt just coming out and the rug becoming beautiful and pristine. It's amazing.
Oh,
They should
genuinely.
definitely make rug washing simulator.
Well, to be fair, they make a lot of mundane games these days that are actually really fun, so I could see that happening. But speaking of games, we're going to have a little chat on our first section because we're going to split our podcast up into sections because we're professionals.
So
Um,
fancy.
yeah, so our first section is we're going to talk about the indie games, what we've been playing. That is our first section. It's really innovative, it's really creative. No one's done it before. It's fantastic. What have you been playing?
Well, as you well know, Cal, I've been playing Iris and the Giant, which I actually did an article about for indie game culture, and I loved it because it was this roguelike deck builder, which is like one of my absolute favorite subgenres. Like, give me some cards, tell me if you die, you have to start over, but you have slightly more progress. I am there. So I was actually really blown away with how good it was, though, because it's such a sort of small indie game, and it really does a lot in such a small environment. So it's based around this young girl called Iris, and she's battling with her mental health, and that sort of comes through in the game. She's tackling the demons in her mind, and as you go, you collect memories which show snippets of her being bullied at school or her parents just being like unable to connect to her. And I just found it so powerful from an emotional standpoint. I love games that tackle serious topics like mental health, and I felt they did it so well with this one. And although these sort of combat mechanics are very simplistic in that you can only play one card per turn and there are sort of a limited amount of cards, it was actually really good. And I found myself just wanting to play again and again just to get better and collect more upgrades. And you can like unlock imaginary friends by completing challenges. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've played like one of these sort of small one-person developer indie games that's captured me so much. Like usually they're either okay, terrible, or relatively decent, but this one was genuinely good, and I was really blown away with how incredible it is. So I would definitely recommend Iris and the Giant. It was fantastic.
Yeah, but whenever I was looking at it, it kind of went past with zero fanfare. I don't think anyone's really took any notice of it. And whenever I was looking at it, it was kind of like, oh, that's trying to be Slay the Spire. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's actually quite like, apart from the whole deck building turn-based roguelike, it is quite different to Slay the Spire in terms of the combat strategy and stuff. Like Slay the Spire is all about sort of building your deck to cultivate synergies and playing lots of cards on the same turn and getting draw power, etc. Whereas with Iris and the Giant, it's more about getting a deck that can tackle different types of enemies rather than necessarily working together as one deck. And finding your strategies, very different experience to Slay the Spire. Like it's hard to describe without sort of having the game in front of me to say, hey, look what's happening here. But it is a very completely different experience, which is why I think I like it so much. Because if it was the same style of game, I'd just go and play Slay the Spire because that is the GOAT. I love it. No game will ever touch Slay the Spire for me. But because it is very different and it's a lot more story based, like Slay the Spire has plenty of lore, but the story is basically non-existent. Whereas with Iris and the Giant, the story does develop so much, and you sort of see this girl battling her subconscious demons and fighting for her mental. It's really beautifully done. And yeah, I really liked it, especially as it's like a short, simple game. Play it for a few hours, a few days, and just love it, which is what I like in games. I don't like games that I have to play for weeks on end. I like games that I can just get out of my system. So this was perfect for me.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. It reminds me of how like Inscription was to me after playing Slay the Spire. The Slay the Spire, I mean, that combat, it's so addictive and I love it. But
I love it
Inscription
so
offered
much.
a really great story experience, and I like that like there are games that are able to build up that using the card mechanics, and also games that like address like mental health, like
Yeah.
Amori, which talked a lot about dissociative identity disorder, like made it like in a good commercialized format so they could address it, and no, I think that's really admirable. So love
What
that.
was Inscription like? I never played that one.
It was a lot more dark. It's kind of a meta game. Like this game is happening, but also there's footage, like kind of Blair Witch style footage storytelling, where a guy is like, you're seeing his life as he's like through a camera of like him discovering a card game in his backyard, kind of thing. And like, everything just spirals out of control. But
Okay.
it was good. I just, the card mechanics aren't as great as Slay the Spire, but it's a really interesting take on like card roguelikes because it's not
Yeah.
actually a roguelike, but it makes you think that it is. So
No, because I know
yeah.
that one, because when I did my creative writing masters last year, the girl in front of me would always play it during lectures. So I was just kind of like watching over her shoulder,
Wait,
seeing
she
it on the
played
screen.
Inscription during lectures?
Yeah.
That's surprising because that's actually there's some pretty brutal like moments in the game where there's a little bit of mutilation and stuff. I'm like, wait, you can
Yeah, sometimes I'm looking at her screen, I'm like, what is going on there?
wow. But that sounds so interesting. It's like wow, that's such a cool like experience there.
How about you, JT? What have you been up to gaming wise?
Oh, recently I got into Core Keeper after making a couple of YouTuber friends. And
Oh, nice.
that's great. A friend of mine, she invited me into her big group of friends, and over the course of like 3 days, we completely like colonized like the entire world, and it was really interesting. Core Keeper, it's kind of like a mix of Stardew Valley meets Terraria meets a bit of Factorio,
I've
and
definitely seen the trailer for it. I'm just like Googling it now to jog my memory. Oh, yes,
yeah,
that one. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
it's so
It looks
much
really
fun.
cool.
And
And
just to do a fun little plug, I spoke to the developer and the interview is on the website. So
That's exciting. When
and
was that?
that was a couple of months ago. He was a very nice man. And his
Nice.
game is very good. I have played it as well. It is very much Terraria meets Stardew Valley. I would say more Terraria, but it's
oh
very
yeah,
cool.
I feel like a lot of it is like Terraria, but like it's like that way of I don't know how to describe it. Terraria is like upside like side scrolling, and that's like Pokemon kind of.
Yeah.
But Yeah, no, it was so much fun. I wasn't as big into like the grindy elements of like gathering resources, so I just joined a couple of friends to start decorating things, and I made a very janky rail network that I was very proud
Love
of. It
it.
just, it was the like, I don't know, it worked in such a fun way, and there's just so many like different ways you can enjoy the game. Like you don't have to go in the full route of like upgrading,
Yeah,
gathering all your resources, and also
I
there's the
love
threat
gathering resources.
of there's like little caveling squads, these enemies that would come and destroy your things if you weren't
Oh,
if you didn't protect your like your walls and resources well enough. Like they destroy my tracks, and I was so upset. And
that would stress me out so
yeah,
much.
but it was great because then we had to like make some defenses and stuff around
Yeah.
everything. Make sure like there were protections. Like if they broke through this, here's a wall here. And we were playing on hard difficulty, so there's big
Ah,
punishments if we were not able to
I'll
stop the
play on
first wave.
easy. I'll definitely play a game like that on easy.
Yeah, but it was such a great game with a community of friends. I think I just can't imagine playing that alone. Now, I feel
Yeah.
like that would be take
Yeah.
so much more time and effort.
It's much like Terraria in that way, where it's so much more difficult if you do try and tackle it on your own. And that game as well, it is as complex as you want it to be, because like you can stick to your little mine and you can kind of do whatever you want, or you can break off into like the different biomes and you can go after the core. And like there's a lot of DLC out for it now, even though, well, not DLC, but like updates, because it's technically not completely finished yet.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
but like you can go off and try and fight all these really hulking bosses, like, and
Yeah,
same as Terraria, like they will really give you a hard time. So it is a very cool game.
I
I haven't
played
given.
Terraria once for like an hour as a teenager, got annoyed because it wasn't progressing quickly enough and never touched it again.
oh,
That's the thing about Terraria, though. The same thing with Core Keeper. If you do come to it on your own, you'll probably not have a great time, because it's one of those
Right,
games where if you don't really know what you're doing, no one's going to tell you what to do, and you'll kind of
right.
just probably give up.
That
yeah. I
makes
remember having
sense.
to go to the wikis, like, okay, what do I do next in Terraria? It's like I go to hell and I fight this thing. How do I get this thing? It's like, wait, what? That's absurd. Why would I throw this doll into the lava? But
Yeah,
it's great. It's also fun to discover that stuff on your own. But
definitely. I
yeah.
love finding secrets in games.
Yeah. Oh, also, quick mention. I also did a bit of Sons of the Forest. I don't know if you consider it an indie game as much, but it was really brutal and fun. My favorite part was like being attacked by these flying evil karate chopping babies, and also building.
Karate chopping
They
babies.
Yeah.
were they could do some very sick flips.
That is insane.
And also, we were building a tree house, and I think we took us 3 attempts to build it because one of us kept like making it fall down. It was me. And it was an awful like if you made it fall down, like all these like physical pieces of wood would just like come down in a big like I don't know, a big audible like slunk, and it was pretty horrific to watch, and it took us so long to build it, but it was I don't know, that's one of those games where it's actually I don't think I like it as much, but with friends it's a great game. So yeah, I just want to
Awesome.
mention that because that caused me that was an experience to play this past last weekend.
I don't
No,
play
I've been
games
following
at
Sons of
all.
the Forest a little bit, just because I'm not going to buy it until it's on PlayStation. It's in early access and PC, and I've been locked out, as I am locked out of many things. But it does look like it's a real step up from the first one. Like you have your companions now, and you have like there's an actual story to it that isn't just go and find your son, and that's about the height of it, really. Like there's a
Right.
lot more to it, and I
Yeah.
do like that.
No, it's really impressive. It just it takes a bit to get into, and again, alone, I don't see the appeal as much,
Yeah,
or it's so much more work, like all these other games. So yeah, but it was a good time to play through. I just wanted to mention it.
I'm glad you have fun with it.
Yeah,
And then just me. Well, like I said, there isn't a lot that I can speak of because I've been flat out with a headset on my head. But the one thing that I have been getting into quite a lot, and it's just one of those like kind of passive time sink games. Like I make it like it's the equivalent to like middle-aged moms playing Candy Crush. This is my Candy Crush. If you've ever played Dorfromantic, it's a game where you essentially put together little towns and cities and little rivers and trains. It's like a
Does it have a
tile
board
build,
game version of it?
potentially, because it's a tile builder, and you
Yeah,
just
I think I've seen the
Hmm.
board game version of it, but not the like real version of it.
mhm.
Oh, I think I
Essentially
played
what you're
that board
trying to
game
do.
version of that actually at a convention once.
Essentially what you're trying to do is just match things up so that they are like aesthetically pleasing. Like if you have a river section, put it together with another river section, but it's also beside some trees, but it's also beside some houses. And the more that you can kind of link up seamlessly, the more points you get. But it's just one of those games where you don't really have to think too much
I
about
like
it.
those kinds of games. I really like those kinds
Yeah.
of games. It's
I
just nice to be able to shut off my brain for a while and just zone out and just play. Quite all the voices are just constantly saying, "You got to do this, you got to do that." I'm so stressed all the time.
Oh yeah, I
So
remember playing that game at a Fanime Con in it was an anime convention in San Jose, like almost a year ago. So it was it's really fun to hear. It's like, oh, that's actually it's a video game like format too.
apologies.
Oh, no worries.
But yeah, it's definitely one of those games where like you know everything you need to know about it within the first 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and after that, like it doesn't get any harder. It doesn't get any more complex. You get as much out of it as you put into it, and if you don't enjoy it in the first 5 minutes, you're not going to get anything out of it after that. But it's been really fun. And then in terms of the games that I've been playing within indies outside of that, you'd have to go back to I was kind of in a bit of a review binge there where I reviewed about 6 or 7 games on the trot, and it really burned me out. But amongst those, there was a game called Season: A Letter to the Future, which was absolutely fantastic. In the review, I essentially said that this is the evolution of what walking simulators are. Like, I think the kind of first-person walking simulator is kind of been milk dry, and there's not a lot more that people can do with it and be profound and be like noticed. But
Yeah.
Season: A Letter to the Future is kind of it takes that exact model in terms of the narrative and various bits and pieces like that, but it makes it a bit more open-ended. And the way they do that is like very vast open spaces, and then you have a bike mechanic where you can just basically cycle around
Oh,
and
nice.
explore things. It's just a very cathartic experience. Like the one thing I will say is the bike mechanics are not flawless. Like,
Oh no,
but
that would be it for me. I cannot be dealing with bad movement controls. I
but
can't.
when they are good, they are very, very good. Like, a thing I said in the review was like, there are little gaming moments that you kind of pick up for your like mental scrapbook. Like, I would say like coming out of the vault for the first time in Fallout, and like Journey going down like that sun-kissed moment whenever you're going down the sand at speed. Like, I have all these little things in a scrapbook in my mind, and they're just like little 10-second clips that you never forget. Going down the first hill on the bike in that game, that's something that I have in there. That's going to stay there. It's very, very special.
I
I
love
wouldn't say
that.
the game's like monumentally brilliant. Like, it has its flaws, and the story is good to an extent, but it's not groundbreaking. But that one section, that was very,
Yeah.
very good.
How you're describing it reminds me of how I felt. Did you guys ever play Omno?
No, I don't think I've heard that.
I loved Omno. When I first got the snowboard in Omno, it like blew my mind. I was having like the most fun. It's like the most beautiful swishing slaloming mechanic ever. It was absolutely brilliant. So when you were talking about that sort of mental scrapbook of things, that immediately came to my mind. Also, if you haven't played it, JT, seriously, Omno is incredible. It's wonderful. It's like this kind of adventure game where you're exploring this alien world and you're discovering like new plants and animals, and you've got to create like a scrapbook of them. It's like a platformer as well, and you're solving puzzles. Like, it's so brilliant. I adored it. It's one of my favorite indie experiences ever.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I just was scrolling through the pics, and I saw the one with the snowboard. It's like, oh, I see it. That looks very
Yeah,
cool.
no, honestly, it's brilliant. There's so many different like mechanics and stuff that you unlock as you play through that throughout the game, and yeah, it's fantastic. On
Yeah,
It's also a game that you could play in the space of an hour, but you'd be doing yourself an injustice if you did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, collecting all the achievements is definitely the way to go with that one. There's so much to discover in the game. I think it's about I want to say 7 hours to get everything, but honestly, it's such an amazing experience. I played the whole thing in 2 days, and I just felt like empty after it was over because I was like, I want to go back, I want to experience it for the first time all over again. Like, it's absolutely brilliant.
I love that.
And then
Sorry, please continue.
The one last thing that I was playing, as another review I done, it was for Back Firewall. I'm not going to spend a lot of time.
I read
chatting
your
about
review
it,
for that one
but
actually.
it's weirdly good. I don't like. I describe a lot of games and reviews as like my first indie project, and that is one of the games that I would kind of throw into that pile. Is like the rubbery textures and like it has to carry itself on kind of poking fun at itself, like, oh, the game doesn't look very good, and all the self-aware humor. But it kind of works at the same time. It's not amazing, but I mean, if you catch it on a sale, it'll be a pretty good one to pick up.
Nice, so many fun games to add to my wish list.
Whoa, what a seamless transition. That was amazing. Wow. That was fantastic. Well, now we're on to our second section, and that second section is indie games on our radar. That's basically a set of games where we have kind of looked through what's happening probably in the month of March, maybe a little bit onwards. I'm not sure what you guys have been picking up, and we're going to be talking about why they are on our radar. So take it away, whoever you like.
All right. Well, there's one game a friend recommended I check out that I'm kind of excited for, and also I think you'd like it too, Callum. It's called Skate Story,
Skate
and
Story.
it's a. Have you heard of it?
I think I have heard of it. I can't remember why.
Well, you play as a glass demon skater skating through the underworld, and like, the music was really phenomenal. And every time you crash, you shatter into a million bits. And yeah, no, like I never really tried too many skating games, but like I kept looking more at it. I was like, wow, this looks phenomenal. So excited to try that out. And there's also the obvious like Hollow Knight soap song, which I always hope is a month or two away. But that's probably gonna be like another year or two if it's been this long.
No, I think they are releasing it in 2023. I think they just haven't given us a date for it, but they haven't said they've pushed it back to 2024. So I'm choosing to have faith in them.
I think I'm just gonna let them give them like as much time as they want, but it's gonna take a while. I know.
No, I realized as you were chatting there, I know exactly why I know what Skate Story is, but I'm not allowed to disclose why because of
Oh.
NDAs. Not to sound all
wow.
like pro.
Exciting.
That's exciting. Okay.
Sorry about that. But yeah, I'll go with the ones that are on my radar. In fact, I'll do just one in case I overlap with Melika and ruin her day. So the one that I picked out of all of them is, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Tashia?
I think, yeah.
Tashia. Yeah, that's the one that's on my radar for at the very most of
It
the
looks
three
so
that I've
good.
chosen. It's for me, it's kind of like Breath of the Wild meets Moana meets Alba Wildlife Adventure. If you ever played that one, that's a bit more of a deep cut, but it's kind of a blend of those three things. And it's like an open world adventure, but there's lots of like little cool things about it. So you've got locomotion physics. So like you've got your little wind glider like you have in most of those games at this point. You also got like foliage physics, they call it. So like you can bend palm trees back and you can use those as like slingshots to fire yourself into the air. Like all of the traversal looks very, very satisfying and cathartic. And then
yeah, the trailer is so amazing. I love it.
So how do you spell it? Sorry, that sounds like a great game.
TCHIA.
That's the one.
Okay.
The other thing that really excites me about it, like if you are aware of Lost Ember or of the cancelled game Wild, where you can kind of like take control of animals as you kind of encounter them in the game.
Wild cancelled?
Yeah, or at least it's.
I think I remember seeing like stuff about it way back.
Yeah, it was either cancelled or it's one of those that's kind of in development hell and no one talks about anymore. I can't remember.
Give it a Google. That sounds so familiar.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous. Like looking at the screenshots for it. But,
yeah,
I can't believe that was cancelled. That one looks so good.
well, this is kind of like got that sort of thing in a microcosm. Like you can kind of take control of animals and kind of use them for like puzzle solving and things within the world. Lost Ember did that as well. I think the problem with Wild is they tried to be very, very ambitious with it and they couldn't pull it off.
It did look incredibly detailed from what we had of it. So perhaps, yeah, I think that's probably likely what happened.
I see a bit of Tachia where a character is moving up a wall on smooth stone, and it just screams Genshin Impact to me.
Which screams Breath of the Wild.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that to it as well. But that's one that's on my radar, and I'll let Melika say one before.
I'm so sad that she is PlayStation exclusive. I was gonna, but I think it's a timed exclusive, isn't it? So I think.
Yeah, it's one of those rare ones that we're actually going to get on like the catalog. That doesn't happen very often. I think Stray was the last one that happened.
Yeah, so. I'm just gonna be patient and wait till it's released on Xbox and then get it. But yeah, no. The one on my radar is it's not much about it, but what there is looks really good, and it's Way to the Woods, which is basically about this sort of mother deer and her child, and they're sort of going on this adventurous journey, trying to find, and then It's who knows what, because there's so little details about it. They're just trying to find something. I don't know what they're trying to find. All I know is that the trailer looks so cute. There's one point where the mother deer like headbutts a vending machine to get food for her little baby, and that was what sold it for me. I'm like, yes, I want to be a deer headbutting vending machines. Let's go. But like, it looks like it's gonna have like narrative elements and also kind of relaxed gameplay, which I'm after something like that right now. I want something that's a bit more toned down, quiet, and calm. So yeah, and the cuteness. Any game that looks cute is immediately on my radar. So that one, the release date is March 2023. We still don't have an exact date, but it's coming straight to Game Pass. So I'm looking forward to playing it day one whenever it is released. So yeah, that's definitely the one that I'm keen to check out.
Are you worried it'll turn into Bambi? And the
No,
mom's gonna
I'm not.
be
I'm not
deaded.
ready to have my heart broken because I recently
Oh.
finished playing a Plague Tale Requiem finally, and I was crying. So I haven't cried at a game in I don't even know how long, but I actually cried real tears at the ending of that. I won't give spoilers, but it broke me, and I'm not prepared for a game to break me again. So I need Way to the Woods to end with them finding whatever they're looking for, mother and child being perfectly happy and safe. That is what I need from it. And it's probably not what I'm going to get from it, but I want it so badly.
Well, I'm so scared to play those kinds of games because I'm such a sap. Like, I'm glad I got into VTubing, and one of the best parts of that is that when you cry, your VTuber doesn't show that. So it's like, okay, thank goodness.
Oh.
And just to break off on a tangent and not make it not about indies for too long, I'm very surprised that I've found someone else that actually played through the end of A Plague Tale Requiem.
Really? Has not many people played it? It's so good.
I mean, I reviewed it and I played it through to the end, and like, it was okay. Like,
I
it definitely,
liked
it's
it.
a lot better than Plague Tale Innocence. They fix a lot of the problems and
Yeah,
they make it a bit
the
more.
first one was so glitchy. I remember one point I like fell through the floor and I was like walking underneath the skybox and it was so weird.
It was just very, it was very simplistic in terms of like,
Yeah.
it was like Last of Us combat, and they didn't do a lot more with it.
I didn't really like the combat in Requiem. I'll give that, because the problem was the scaling. Like, it went through most of the game, you didn't really have to do anything, and then there were a couple of fights at the end that were really difficult, and you had to like play over and over again to memorize exactly where the enemies were going to come from, or you wouldn't be able to do it. Like, it's one of those games that no matter how good you are at gaming, you probably wouldn't do it in the first place because there's like enemies spawning behind you, so you need to know exactly when to turn back. So it took me like a good half hour some of those fights, and that's just not really what Plague Tale Requiem was for the rest of the game. So it felt very sort of dissonant, and it took away from that emotional impact for me because the story was getting broken up by me getting frustrated with the combat.
Yeah, there were a couple of weird kind of difficulty spikes. I think that was kind of the same with the first one. The first one,
yeah, again, it was like it's just a couple, because so much of the game involves either knocking out a couple of guards every now and then or just not fighting at all, and then you'll occasionally get like swarms of enemies, and it's like, what choose one. I don't care which you choose, but commit.
yeah.
So I've actually never played either of the games. I've seen some videos of it, and also I got on free on Epic. But is it mostly like stealth combat?
Yeah,
You're playing
very much
as
stealth,
a
very much
woman
stealth.
based, like, versus like what, the Spanish Inquisition basically, or the
The whole
theocracy?
idea is you're essentially very vulnerable in the game until a point where you're inexplicably not for some reason, and then you
Oh.
are again. Like that was definitely a problem I had with it. But
Yeah.
I would say, like, get a update from what happens in Innocence and don't play it, because it's actually not very good. And
Okay.
Requiem genuinely is quite good. I think
Yeah.
Innocence is
The
it's
graphics
okay.
in Requiem are fantastic. I really was impressed with the graphics.
They are. And the thing about Innocence that really bugs me is the ending, which is absolutely dreadful. Like,
The ending is
dreadful.
not great. It's not great.
And I'll not spoil it just in case you do put yourself
Yeah.
through it, but don't put yourself through it.
Is it a cliffhanger?
It's not right. It's not that
Okay.
bad. It's playable. It's just not as good as the sequel. I still would say do play it first, but you could just read about it if you wanted to. It depends how much you like stealth games. Like the first one, the gameplay is okay, but the story's fantastic, and that made it worth it for me. But if you're more about the gameplay, then yeah, just read what happens and jump straight into Requiem.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Kind of like stealth games. Also, like, I'm really bad at the stealth game, and I just kept messing up and have to like go back to my quick save over and over again. So.
And I'm going to jump in with the other two that I left behind just in case. So one of them is one that we've got Anthony reviewing at the moment, and it's called Dredge. Basically, it's like a survival horror RPG fishing game. That's the way I can best describe it. It's another one from Team 17, and I've
I
already
love
talked.
Team 17.
I've already spoke about just like they're throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, but this one looks like it's a little bit more upmarket than the stuff they've been doing last year, in the sense that like there seems like there's a lot more to it, and I think they're marketing it a lot heavier than the other ones. I think they're a bit more proud of it as well. Um, but like, it's kind of a little bit of this war of mine and like the survival aspect, very very toned down in the sense it's not as aggressively ruthless.
Okay.
But then it's kind of also because it's nautical based. It's kind of like if you really up the ante on Spiritfarer's kind of like resource management and boat upgrades and the fishing aspect of it, and took out all of the like the lovely parts, you know.
Oh, but I love the lovely parts.
Yeah, it's definitely a very gritty game. But I think it's definitely one that you should keep your eye on. And then another one, and it's kind of just a footnote for me because I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be quite as good as I think it might be, because they have let me down several times in the past. Like I used to love everything Annapurna done without fail.
Mm,
Every single time they knocked it out of the park,
they're really
everything
good
under the
usually.
umbrella was great. But then they let me down with like things like Maquette, awful. Hindsight, awful. Um,
You might
but
be about to say the one that I've got on mine as well, so I'm very keen to hear what you kept saying.
is it Storyteller?
It is Storyteller.
It looks very good. It's
It
something that
does.
they've done a couple of times before. Hindsight is one of them, and then there's a game that Annapurna is very proud of, and it's called Gorogoa.
I was literally about to say Storyteller looks like Gorogoa because I played Gorogoa.
Yeah, I feel like it could be
It's
another
got a lot of
Gorogoa.
similar aspects to it by the looks of it.
Basically, it's like taking still pictures and kind of maneuvering them and changing their order and fiddling about with them until they like give you a new animation or progress the story within the picture to create like a full storybook effect. And Gorgo was kind of like still moving
Yeah,
pictures
you have
in
to
a
like
block of
move,
four that can
like, you
interact with each
zoom in
other.
and zoom out and then move them around to create like pathways and stuff. Like Gorogoa started off decent, but then towards the end of the levels, I was having to like Google the answers for some of them because it's getting so tricky. So I didn't completely finish Gorogoa. I think I got about 3/4 of the way through it until I was like, no, you know what? If I'm just Googling everything, there's no point in me continuing at this point. But no, Storyteller does look good based on the trailer. It looks a bit simpler than Gorogoa, which I do like. And yeah, I just like this sort of like medieval. Also, speaking of that, so many games lately have had like medieval style graphics. Like I
I've seen
can't be
so
the
much
only
of
one
that.
noticing that. Like it's definitely becoming a trend. So that's definitely one that Storyteller's jumping in with as well.
There was another one quite recently that now that you say the medieval, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was like Inkla. Oh, I can't remember. I'm gonna do some googling, but someone can
Oh,
chat
hang on,
over me.
I think I know the one you mean. Ink Illuminati or something like that.
Yes, that's the very
Yes.
one. It's one that kind of popped into my head when you were telling me that. That's like a
Yeah.
turn-based RPG style one that's
Yeah.
kind of got the
I
same
haven't played that one yet, but I want to
vibe.
play that. Potion Craft as well was medieval style art.
Oh
It
wait, that
must.
was medieval. I guess yeah,
Well, it
that
was
was medieval.
yeah. Potion Craft had like sort of like medieval sort of like line arty style to
Okay. Yeah,
There's
sure.
always something that's in vogue.
it.
Yeah, it does feel like that's been on the rise so much like that. Now there's the one choices game with like who plays the king. I'm trying to remember like by the
Rains.
king. Or there's no Reigns, but there's another one.
Oh, yes, Your Grace.
Yes,
I
that's
love
right.
Yes, Your Grace.
Yeah, I my favorite part of that was you had the option like to execute a man for like trying to flee, and then I surrendered like immediately. And it's like, oh, I guess he died for nothing. But yeah, I've just seen that on the rise so much. There was another one that looked like it was a medieval times. It was basically like a human husbandry kind of game. I'm forgetting the name of it right
I
now,
don't think I've
but
seen that one.
yeah, it's just basically you're having people date each other and making things work out, and it's really interesting to see that that kind of style has been on the rise. I don't know how long that'll last, but it's really interesting.
No, there's always something in vogue every year. Last year, I think it was like kind of text-based adventures were making a return. There was like Norco and Citizen Sleeper and Robe Warden, like that, like it came on strong last year. Maybe this year is the year of medieval. Is there any more indies on the radar before we jet off?
Not yet.
Oh,
There's some coming up in April, but I'm gonna wait till next episode to talk about those.
I don't know when it's going to come out, but I'm really looking forward to Blasphemous 2 because I love the story of the original. It was so grim and depressing. They added so much more like content for free. Like they added a whole like 2 or 3 DLCs and an entire new ending to like change like the narrative of the game. And I just don't know where they'll take it because it seems like they finished every narrative thread in Blasphemous. So
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the story, but I don't think they have a release date planned yet. So I'm just gonna keep my eyes open.
2026 or something like that.
It may be.
Oh dear.
Hey, look at that. Woo! Lost my breath. Okay, we're into the indie game culture big discussion where we talk about a big thing in the indie game world that needs discussing. And today we are discussing, is there an oversaturation of farming sim games and well, cozy games in general, but more specifically farming sim games? Does anyone
Yes.
want to actually take it away and tell me why that's exactly the case?
It just seems to me that like every other Kickstarter game now is just like a brand new farming game that's so totally different to anything you've seen before. But it's not. It's just cute graphics with everything you've seen exactly the same as before. And I just think I'm not opposed to it because I like farming games as a genre. I think they're very fun. But I think the problem is when too many come out at once, they stop trying to do anything new. And the only thing they've... Hang on, pause. Don't know what was going on. Right, let's start the session again. And I think the only thing they do new is just new graphics, and I don't care for that. I like it when the game gives new exciting mechanics. So if a new indie game has a decent hook that makes it different from the other farming games, then sure. But if it's just like, here are different crops to farm, here are different animals to farm, no, I want some kind of either story element or gameplay element that makes it more than just a farming game, because otherwise they're all exactly the same, and I don't see why I would buy your indie game over something established like Stardew Valley, for example. Like, it needs to stand out more, and I think too many people, like consumers, get sidetracked by pretty graphics, a cute trailer, and like I said, literally, if you go on Kickstarter, search video game, you're going to see pretty much every other one is going to be an indie farming game that's coming out soon, and I just don't see the need for so many. I would rather have them work longer on them, develop something more exciting, more detailed, rather than just put out another one to get the quick money from people who think it looks cute.
Yeah, no, I think it just Stardew Valley was so good and I loved it, but I spent so much time like building my farm, watering crops, harvesting, and just repeating the cycle until I just had enough money, or I
Yeah.
had like married and turned my children into birds and stuff. But
You loved your children,
I mean, I had
JT.
to. But going from that game to so many others, I just feel like I start to despise the farming mechanics in other games a little bit because of that. Like, I loved Core Keeper, but I hated the farming elements in that because Stardew Valley had just like exhausted me from that. Like,
I think that's
it's
a very good point. Like what I was saying about them having something different. Like in farming games, I like farming for the first couple of days of the game, but after that, I want to do other stuff and have the farm happening by itself in the background. Like I want, for example, with Stardew Valley, I wake up, I go to the mines, I come back at 10 p.m. to sleep. Like I spent all day in the mines. If it was just, hey, let's make my farm and get more crops, I would get bored of that so fast, which is a problem I see with the indie games. They don't include enough other stuff. Like there's always a fishing mini game because what would be the point otherwise? But aside from that, there's not enough other stuff to keep me interested. And yeah, that's what I feel is missing from a lot of these indie games, and the oversaturation of them is because they know they can get away with it because there is a market for it. And I think it's making developers a bit lazy on that front.
I think ultimately the problem is that there are either games that try and be Stardew Valley, like Super Sue's Story is one that just basically tried to be Stardew Valley, or like it pretty much is to the letter Stardew Valley. Then there are games that try and blend Stardew Valley with something else, like Animal Crossing, and then you have something like Coral Island, which again just doesn't hit the
I
mark
haven't
at
played
all.
Coral Island, but I was tempted by it because it did at least look a bit different. So is it not?
It's okay. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. Basically the problem is Stardew Valley. It is the one. Like I don't see anything bettering it because one, it in its vanilla stage, it pretty much perfected what Harvest Moon got wrong, and then it's had 7 or 8 years of constant development by Eric Barone to get it to a stage where it's better than it ever deserved to be, really. And he's also making the Haunted Chocolatier, which is going to be
so hyped.
if you want more Stardew Valley, there's going to be more Stardew Valley, so you can just wait for that. But like, there's been so many in the last year that have like either tacked on farming or tried something different in the farming space, and it just didn't go right. Like Coral Island's one, Ooblets is another, Potion Permit didn't
It's not
extend.
good. I heard good things about Ooblets.
I mean, again, it's okay.
But I think that feeds into what I was saying actually about consumers having a very low bar for what they will accept from a farming game as long as it's cute. So perhaps that's why I heard that it was good.
Yeah, I think Ooblets, also the there's so many other like better card games because of that. It was kind of interesting. Like the synergies didn't work so well. I heard it didn't go so deep. It was like pretty shallow gameplay mechanics with that.
Yeah, and
But
like I've also seen a lot of games that just kind of throw farming in because they've seen that Stardew Valley do it, and
Yeah.
like Cult of the Lamb's a really good example of that, where they just throw in that mechanic, and like yes, it's necessary, and yes, you can do it, but no one really wants to, and no one really
yeah,
does. That's not the point. And I think that's the same with Core Keeper. Like there are aspects of that where you can like fish, or you can go and farm, or you can garden, but you could easily get away with not doing that. And I think that's why that game sort of gets away with it. And same with Call of the Lamb. If you don't engage with those things, it doesn't really hinder you. But there are a lot of games where kind of they base everything on the farming aspect, and it's not the strongest.
Yeah.
yeah. I really appreciate games like Potion Permit that they wholly take out the farming mechanic and just like instead they have you're doctoring or you're just doing something else. And it's still one of those kinds of Sims. It's almost identical to Stardew Valley, but it's still like the farming is gone. So they have different like little gameplay mechanics. Like you do DDR, or you have to play Tetris for a little bit. And I like that. It's different, and they're trying something new, which is good.
Potion
Love
Permit's one I still need to play because it looks so good. I really definitely want to play it. It's just finding the time.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a time sink, but it's really fun. I really liked it. It's just it's like those Sims they consume a lot of time out of your
Yeah,
life.
That's
definitely.
another thing. They are huge time sinks, and if you're going to throw your time into it,
Mm,
you want it to be really deep and really engaging. And I don't think there has been a really deep and engaging one since Stardew Valley. Really, like nothing that
certainly
would
not indie.
no. Like, I mean, there hasn't been any AAA like
I
farming
quite
games
like
that like
Disney Dreamlight Valley.
I've
See,
heard good
the
things.
hilarious thing about that is I got into it right at the end of last year, and I played it like all day, every day for like 2 weeks, and then at my like Xbox Wrapped that showed me like the game I played most, it ended up being Dreamlight Valley by default because I play so many indie games like for a few hours at a time and then move on to something else. So that was the only one I'd committed enough time to, and I never would have expected it. It was really funny, but yeah, it was pretty good because, like I said, I could do the other stuff. I did quests, I did the mining. I was like the farming. I had like a tiny garden of about 10 plants outside my house, and that was it.
See, I wasn't aware that that was like one of your kind of quintessential like farming sim games. I thought it was very like I don't know what I thought it was, but I definitely didn't think it was that.
It depends how you play it. Like the way I played it, it's not really. But then I've seen other people have like 300 pumpkins outside their house and stuff, and like all bunches of different farms. Like because different biomes have like different crops that are like endemic to them, and they'll have like huge farms in each of their biomes and stuff. So I think Disney Dreamlight Valley is a good example of where you can, like I said, what I want from the farming games is where you can choose how much you to interact with the farming aspect of it. So for people who love farming and can't get enough of it, they can do that. For people like me who just want that to be a fun background mechanic in an otherwise much more detailed game, that was good for it as well.
Mhm.
I appreciate that so much because it turns into tedium after time, and no, it's still nice. It's nice to have like routine and it's like okay, this is a nice comfort thing that won't really challenge or punish me. I can come to it. It's kind of like Power Wash Simulator. I can go to this and it gives me the reward, and like I earn this. And but yeah, if when you get down to it, if you like have to water like 100, 200 crops, it
Who's got
takes
the
you
time? It's so
yeah,
grindy.
If you can't automate it, it's just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I think the thing that I would kind of leave my argument on, and this is the litmus test I have for a lot of games at the minute. Square Enix, a AAA company with millions and millions and millions of dollars at their disposal, decided they would do a farming sim game in the form of Harvestella. It wasn't good.
I
Like
was gonna say,
it wasn't good. And they are very good at producing games that just aren't good at the minute. So if they decided it's time for us to do it, it's time for everyone to jump out and do something else. Uh, I've had I kind of take these kind of stints where I fixate on one company, whether it be like EA years and years ago. They've actually got a little bit better, bless them. But Square Enix is the one at the minute where I'm like, why are you still trying?
I gave up on Square Enix after the mess that was Balan Wonderworld because I was so hyped for that. You actually were there when I got into when I was trying to play that because I wrote that for Very Alley, but like I was so hyped watching the trailer, and then I got this pathetic unfinished game that was totally empty, and I was like, how have you taken such an incredible concept and wrecked it? So I haven't touched a Square Enix game since that.
I will say that for the longest time I was pretty disparaged about the AAA industry. I do feel a little bit better about two new releases, Hi-Fi Rush and the Dead Space remake that actually I really liked, but most part it's been I don't know, a little bit disappointed or cynical about the games they making from that. But I don't know, still now and then like a good game comes out. It just I usually like wait to hear like someone else tell me it's good, so like, before I actually trust it.
Valid.
But I don't mind if a company comes out with like one every 3 to 6 months and it doesn't do well, but they put their heart and soul into it. Square Enix have been making so many games, like so many, and none of them have been good. Like Forspoken was not good, Harvestella was not good, Valkyrie Elysium was not good, Babylon's Fall was easily the worst game of the last half a decade. Like it's been awful, awful. But you know what? They're trying. And they have Kingdom Hearts 4 to make, and I just really hope they turn it around.
Oh, I was trying to. I was tasked with making a video covering the timeline of Kingdom Hearts, and it's just such a complicated mess of narrative to sort through. So I just don't know how they're gonna connect to Kingdom Hearts 4.
Yeah,
But,
you need to be across like 12 different platforms to do that. Well, not as much anymore, but you definitely had to. Like there was like canon flip phone games that you had to know about. I think that was Recoded, which you can now play now in the bundle, and it's been reformed into like a bog standard like KH1 remake, and it's fine, and it only really serves to put in like one tiny plot point, and that's it. The rest of it's just like nothing. But they made so many things canon, and it was so silly.
Oh, my first part, a little side, last aside of Kingdom Hearts, but they reverse, like they have these rules they set in the world and they'll just break them at any given point. It's like, oh no, it was time travel.
Yeah,
or
just the most basic out they can do.
Or there's a bit where Sora, the protagonist, they have like there's 3 or 4 characters that are like a copy bit of their soul or their heartless and their nobody. They just it's exhausting to wrap your head around like just the who's who and like why do they exist and like why is this an actual person? But
Tetsuya and Nomura, he has a habit of writing himself into a wall and then having to write himself back out again. It's brutal. But yeah, I think we've really exhausted the farming simulators are terrible. Please stop them unless you're going to do them properly. Debate.
Sorry, I just went a little tangent there into Kingdom Hearts and the others, but yeah, no, I hope they try something else or they just add different mechanics like that with farming sim games.
In a nutshell, if you want to play one, just go play Stardew Valley until something good comes along.
Exactly.
But yeah, thanks guys for tuning in for this one. It's been a fun one. We're going to make this a regular thing, we promise. And we will be back in hopefully 2 weeks to a month's time, depending on what we plan on doing. And we will give you some more indie game content. If you want to follow more of our stuff, you can look us up at indiegameculture.com. We do reviews, we do guides, we do everything. And these guys are writing as well as myself.
Yeah, boy.
Oh, yeah.
But like I said, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Say bye-bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye. Have a good one.